you'll see fish, 2 fish eagle up in the tree. There we go. Top right hand side, there they are. 2 fish eagles sitting up there. Wouldn't it be amazing if they swooped down and caught a fish? That would be really great. So there's the greenback tare and waterbuck, fish eagles. We've seen there are water thickneys, there are Egyptian geese, the collared pratincoll, there's the crocodile. There we go, there the water thickneys and the collared pratincoll. There's the crocodile, the hippopotamus, red-billed buffalo weaver in their nests, all the Egyptian geese I mentioned already. And I just heard a beautiful lesser striped swallow, and I'll show you a picture of one, and I'll play the call for you so you know what it sounds like. Now, Ibiza, you want to know, where do crocodiles go when there's no water? So they will go and find water. Now, I've seen many times going out on safari early mornings, in winter especially, you'll see crocodile tracks on the road where they've gone and walked to find other water. So if this dam, for example, had to dry up, this crocodile would probably walk in search of a river and try and get to some permanent water. They do walk over land, and that's how they find more water. Let me find that beautiful lesser striped swallow for you quickly. And it's got quite a distinct call. Beautiful little call. I can't do it, I don't think. Some of you might say, oh, try, Byron, but I'm not going to. That's the beautiful lesser striped swallow. Can you see it there? There we go. How does the lesser striped swallow? I just heard it, but let me play it for you rather, and then I'll see if I can do it. Hear that? Beautiful, interesting sound, and it's got. So that's what I heard, and I just saw one fly past over the water. So they're around too. So there's so much activity here at the moment. There really is a lot going on. It's great. I do enjoy sitting at the dams, enjoying the birding. Crocodile moved slightly, and of course, and all the impala on the other side. Very peaceful sitting at these water holes. You can sit here for ages and just see what comes down to drink and feed. Listen to the sounds. This would be a lovely spot to stop for a cup of coffee. Now, most of my guests would know that our coffee stops are quite interesting. I always add a little bit or something a little extra in their coffee as opposed to milk. It's very, very tasty. It may or may not be a cream liqueur. But with the morning coffee out here in the bush, and especially in winter, it's got a lovely flavor and wonderful, wonderful flavor. Nice taste. Now, I'm going to probably move on from the dam. I'm going to go cruise through the clearings to see what we can find, hopefully some elephant. Now let's go to my friend who's very ominous with an ominous bird.
Yeah, funny fellow that, isn't he? Anyway, there we have a tree full of vultures, and they do look very ominous indeed. And what they're doing is waiting above the carcass of the buffalo that the Birmingham boys left here. Now, the best part of this sighting, quite apart from Byron's exceptional sense of humour, is the fact that there are so many vultures there, and we've frightened a whole lot more off the ground by mistake when we came past here. And I haven't seen a pile of vultures on the ground feeding like that for many, many years. So I'm really pleased that there seems to be some kind of influx of these vultures into this area. So that's really great. Most of those, in fact all of them, I think, are white-backed vultures, and the rest of them flew off into the trees around here. Oh, there's a hooded vulture right at the top. So the very top one on the right hand side, Jesse, is a hooded vulture. Looks a bit like you with your hood on. But the rest of them are all white-backed of various ages. It's excellent news. Good. What we will do, I'm just going to sit here a little bit longer. I wanted to go to the carcass, but the carcass I actually am not going to go to, because we'll frighten them off, and they all sort of leapt off the ground, even though we weren't very close by. So let's just wait here for a little while and enjoy these. And I'm just getting a report on the radio now, is that the Nkuhumas are in Buffalo's Hook, but not too far from the boundary. They're following a herd of buffalo, along with the 3 males that walked up into Buffalo's Hook this morning. So with any luck, they will stampede the buffalo back to the south and do us the gracious pleasure of coming down here, as opposed to spending their lives in the southern Manuleti, which is deeply irksome of them. So I'm not sure what else to tell you about these vultures at the moment. Hashtags for our live questions at WildEarthTV if you'd like to make a comment, simply because they're not doing a huge amount of stuff. Fujums, is that your name? That's Simpkins. Very strange that I got Fujums out of Simpkins. Anyway, Simpkins, you say that the vulture is nature's vacuum cleaner. It is very much nature's vacuum cleaner. That's a pretty good way of putting it. They do a lot of clearing up of the detritus that is left by the predators out here. Now, I mean, I always find that kind of comment quite interesting, because, of course, the hint is that the bird has a function in nature rather than the other way around, and I'll explain what I mean now. Jesse, if you can go to the middle vulture, the very middle one, at the far end of the tree, that one, if you can bang in on that chap. He seems to have something in his beak. Or has he just got a... No, he doesn't. It's just that his beak is at a strange sort of angle. I don't think he does. Shaking his head because there's a fly buzzing around it. If I was a fly, a vulture would be a very good place to be. Yeah, I don't think he's carrying anything. Now, let's just carry on with that discussion. A lot of what people talk about when we talk about nature, and you say, well, what's the point of a fly, and what's the point of a mosquito, and what's the point of a wasp? And the impression is given, especially when you're doing, I think it comes from childhood, when we teach young children, and I was certainly taught, that every creature has its place in nature, that everything serves a function. And as I've become much older, of course, and a little bit wiser in some ways, I've realized, of course, that that's putting the cart before the horse. It's not that animals have a function in nature, it's that they've found a function of nature of which they can exploit, if that makes sense. So yes, while a vulture might be considered nature's vacuum cleaner, it's far more that nature has provided a niche, a trophic niche, and various other kinds of niches for the vultures to occupy, and they've very successfully done that, in the same way that the mosquitoes do the same, and the flies and all the irritating creatures that people say, well, what possible function can they have? It's not a question of them having a function, it's a question of them finding a space in which to live, because nature has provided them with that space in which to live. I don't know if I'm making sense. I am in my own mind. So that's the most important thing. Now, you're wondering if perhaps these vultures haven't come in a greater influx of them simply because of the drought and the greater amount of death. I actually don't think so. We expected to see a huge number of vultures here during the course of the drought, and with all the death that ensued from the lack of water and food, but that didn't really happen. And in fact, there were very few vultures around during the height of the drought, the worst in living memory, as everyone always says whenever we have any kind of drought whatsoever. And I don't know why they should come in. I mean, there's no drought anymore. There's lots and lots of grass around. This buffalo was killed by lions. He wasn't killed by a drought. So I don't think that is the case, Liz. I think it's far more the drought told us how few vultures there are, because carcasses would just lie and rot quietly into the ground. The one around Buffelshoek Dam there that I'm sure we watched kind of melt into the ground was hardly attended by vultures. I think there were 3 or 4 white-backed vultures that came across to it. Otherwise it was just unattended, which is very strange. Oh, and apparently there's a starling next to the vulture. Yes, indeed there is. I can't see. Chandra didn't clean my presenter monitor today. Chandra, I can't be expected to do everything. There is indeed a starling. There it is. Looks to be a Birchall's starling sitting next to the vulture. That's called throwing the cameraman under the bus, everybody. It's not a Birchall starling, it is a Cape glossy starling. I can see that now with my binoculars. It has got a yellow eye, and I just heard it call. It said, Cape glossy starling, Cape glossy starling, Cape glossy starling. Now, of course, we saw the duiker earlier this morning wandering through the grass, and it was very disguised. Now, an animal out here, a friend of mine that looks very much like a duiker, walking through the grass, is Jamie Patterson.
It's the mohawk. It's definitely the mohawk that makes me look like a little duiker, or reminds James, or I remind James of a duiker. Never mind, and don't know where that was going. Anyway, I'm busy standing in the middle of not a death trap, but definitely a vehicle trap. And in terms of talking about grass and things walking through grasses, this time of year it's almost impossible to realize exactly where you are until you're almost right on top of it. So what is happening here from where I started, over there, and then of course over here, is a network of old aardvark burrows, and they run all the way along. I mean, I don't know the exact pattern. I can see places where the ground has collapsed underneath them, and they run all the way along from one entrance to another. So an aardvark, although they'll often bury themselves in, they'll often dig themselves in and then actually block up the entrance to the hole that they're sleeping in. They create these networks of tunnels where they've got lots of exit or escape routes that they can utilize. And then what happens, of course, is that they get used or taken over by, as soon as they're abandoned by the aardvark, by something like a family of warthog, because it's the perfect place to go underground and hide away. And I've also, not so much here, but in other areas, I have seen bush pig living in these burrows as well. And the reason I say it's a vehicle trap, some of you know this story very well, was because I was once following Tingana, and it was sort of grassy like it is now. I wasn't really looking where I was, and all of a sudden the ground disappeared underneath the vehicle, and I dropped, an old aardvark tunnel actually collapsed, and we dropped right up to our axles in the sand, and it took us a very, very long time to get out. Now, these burrows are not occupied, and I can tell that just by sort of, first of all, with aardvark, you get a very specific, very pale species of fly that hangs around the entrances to their burrows if they are in residence. And also there's a lot of spider webs that haven't been disturbed in a while. So whatever it was hasn't come home recently. And what I've noticed now, and it's gone, of course, because I wanted to draw attention to it, it's gone away. But what I've noticed now is the fact that the spider hunting wasps are actually utilizing the entrances to these den sites because they obviously are a convenient place to build a spider web, and therefore for a spider hunting wasp it's the perfect place to go off in search of prey, something to grab and to lay their eggs into and then bury underneath the surface of the soil. So a good place to look for spider hunting wasps as well. Now, we've seen Tingana lying in this exact spot before, not this exact spot, in this exact spot over here before, patiently waiting, and obviously using a technique, either waiting for an aardvark to come out or perhaps warthogs to come home. Just basically, I think, investigating to see, sorry, my bus conductor hat is falling down, basically to see whether or not either an aardvark came out or whether or not this burrow system was occupied. And it's interesting to see that he obviously has developed that as a technique, and all leopards can do it, but it seems as though Tingana is particularly good at it. I imagine at the moment we're busy trying to track down Shadow, and Herbie's managed to actually find her tracks again, which is, it's a very impressive feat indeed, because we're off the road and it's very tricky to see at the moment. And the other thing that I keep thinking about, if you stay there, Craig, if I were to be the height of a leopard, let me go in here, and we're walking through this grass. Shadow is probably under 1 meter tall, so she's probably under 3 feet tall, so she's about this big. It gives you an idea as to, let me actually turn around this way, it gives you an idea as to just how tricky it could be to spot a leopard at this time of year while we're walking through the grass. And I don't even have her camouflage, so I'm basically invisible. You can't see me, I have disappeared. Obviously I'm not invisible, but it does mean that we're sort of walking, especially for me, because I'm not exactly tall. Must be nice to be Brent's height while you're tracking through here. And just to give you one last idea as to how far this burrow system extends, and they do extend very, very far, you can see the change in the soil type and the types of grass. So that's one way to have a look and see. You can actually see the difference between, if we look here, there's still burrow systems here, and the grass is not as good, and it's a slightly paler color. And then if we look under the marula tree at the amount of grass growth there. So that's one way you can be slightly more cautious. Oh, and there's an interesting question from Derek. Derek, you want to know, outside of the wildlife, what are the most dangerous things to encounter on a walk? I suppose a snake could be a dangerous thing. That's wildlife, isn't it? So that doesn't really count. Sticks to the eyes, thorns, rusty nails if you're genre. What else is dangerous? I'm not counting, ticks, snakes, those are all counted as wildlife, so I don't know if we want to include them in that. A snake could be dangerous, a puff adder in particular, just because they don't move. Things like black mamba, boomslang, the chances of being bitten on a walk are so slim. What else is dangerous? Usually me. It's just because I'm clumsy. I'll fall over everything, including my own feet. And then, of course, there's all these obstacles in my way, like that massive stump. Now, those are probably your biggest risks to your safety. Right, it sounds as though James has found an interesting reptile for you. Why don't you go and have a look?
Now, I think, everybody, that is a rough-scaled plated lizard, which is very exciting for me, on account of the fact that we hardly ever see them. Now, we came here to this termite mound where that beautiful lizard is now sunning itself because we thought maybe there were hyenas denning here. It's the old hyena den, or Philemon's dip, and the reason we came here was because there was enormous amount of hyena activity all over the road. But it doesn't seem that there are any hyenas here. There is, however, a rough-scaled plated lizard, and I am not convinced that I know exactly what the diet of the rough-scaled plated lizard is, but I think it probably eats termites and any sort of invertebrate that it can catch, and possibly even smaller lizards. Let me just check that up for you before I tell you a lie by mistake. It is... I will find it. Here we go. Yes, large insects, flowers actually, and fruits. That's right, I remember now. It can be relatively vegetarian, almost. Genre, there's nothing much to see here, really. Has it gone? No, it's still there. I don't have a very good picture of it. And the only other thing you could confuse it with would be a giant plated lizard, but a giant plated lizard is genre. Giant, that's right. It's bigger than that one and not quite as variable in colour. Very nice. Large insects, flowers and fruit. So I imagine, in terms of large insects, it probably eats quite a few beetles. He really is. I mean, I think because of it's quite difficult to expose for it, but he's the most gorgeous golden straw and black colour. And I always think that if I compare them with something like a rock monitor, which looks, one doesn't like to say vicious, but certainly a little angrier, I always think that the plated lizard looks quite friendly. Like he'd quite like to come home with you and share a chinwag over a cup of tea or something. That's possibly the most ridiculous thing I've ever said. And we have a question here from Jamez Rashad. And Jamez Rashad, you're interested in whether or not the plated lizard is territorial. They are territorial, and they are territorial within the mound that they're in. I suspect they probably move around, though, and they mark their territories largely with dung. A lot of reptiles are territorial about the termite mounds in which they live, and the plated lizard is obviously no exception. Yes, and that question came from James Richard, and the reason it was pronounced Jamez Rashad was because that's how it came out of the final control, and it came out of the final control like that because James, of course, a very loyal and one doesn't quote a question, I suppose. I'm going to use it anyway. Oft quoted viewer. So, James, I hope you took our little joke as a sign of our familiarity with you and enjoyment of your questions. Kirsten, I think, for 1 second there, thought I didn't know who she meant. The plated lizard is looking askance at us. You can also see his little ear there, listening to us speak. And he's so still because he's not entirely sure whether he has remained disguised. Now, what I'm going to do, John, if you can keep the camera on him, I'm going to drive very slowly around and see if we can't get a better look at him with the sun perhaps in a slightly better position. And we'll just see if he doesn't move. I'll try and keep it as smooth as possible. There he goes. He's gone down into his hole. That's really very nice, everyone. We don't often see them at all. And this is the den site that is almost disintegrating. This is the one off, I've said Philemon's dip, I meant Philemon's cut line. And what I would like you to notice here, because there are two things I'd like you to notice. If we can just look at the den site first, Chandri. You know how often we ask ourselves, and are asked by viewers, and we ask ourselves as well, how old a termite mound is. This termite mound, I think, has become at least 25% smaller since the hyenas moved out of it and it's had another rainy season on top of it. I think it's got a lot smaller than it was, and you can see how it becomes impossible to tell how old a termite mound is, because they do erode relatively quickly and then they get reoccupied again. So that's quite interesting to consider. Then, as I get out of the car here, I'm hoping against hope, but I don't think it is. I thought this might be the web of the golden orb web spider, and that would have been the first one I'd seen this season, but it isn't. That's a bark spider. And it's interesting because a bark spider shouldn't really be out at this time of the day. Can you see it, Andre? A bark spider, normally what she does is she will fold up her web and eat it during the course of the night, and then she'll come back along one of these strands where I'm pointing, and she will sit on the tree for the rest of the day, and then at night she'll redo the whole thing. And often you can find the male sitting up here at the end of the strand, but I can't see him in this case. I'm just going to have another look at her. Let me go round the other side of her so that I don't get in your way. It is the female that builds the web. It's a tiny little bark spider. She's caught herself a delicious fly. Is that a nice fly? Yes? Say it is. She says it's not very nice because it's been eating a buffalo. Good. We're going to have to turn around. I don't want to destroy her little web. Very nice. Bark spider. Okay, on we go. Plug myself in again. I shall incur the wrath of the final control. There we are. Apparently Jamie is engaged in some kind of bush origami and she'd like to show you.
Not very good bush origami. It's quite an interesting idea, though. In fact, I think we should try some bush origami after we've finished with this particular creature. This is amazing. It's a bagworm. So in other words, there is a worm inside of this cone of sand, and I'd love to know exactly how it has managed to form this particular sort of camouflage construction. The usual bagworms that we see are sort of collections of sticks that are all gathered around the bagworm itself so that you can't even see it. This is a cone of sand, and there's actually, this is the living part, I think. This is the living part of the worm, but also covered in sand. This top part is absolutely fascinating. Now, of course, this is a fantastic biting fly. This is a fantastic way to camouflage oneself, and it's covered in sand. You'd never know it was there. How on earth Herbert found it, I do not know. I don't begin to know. Apparently it was attached up against a tree. However, this is coming home with us so that we can give it to James and he can examine it under the microscope. It looks like a little sand ice cream cone. It's the most fantastic shape. Sorry, I'm probably going slightly cross-eyed looking at that. Trying to focus backwards and forwards from the camera. A fascinating thing. I wonder what on earth it is and exactly what's hiding in there. And obviously that will be its home until it is ready to turn into something else, presumably. But I'm going to pop it back into... Craig's got a moon bag, so there we go. Goes in there. And we'll take it home with us and we'll see what's happening there. What's interesting, I spoke earlier about the grasses and the fact that you could actually see the difference in the grass from where those tunnels are to the normal patches underneath marula trees and so on. But what I was struck by at the moment, it's actually more from where we've come from than here, is that there seems as though in patches here the grasses are dying, and I can't quite work out why. There doesn't seem to be much of a difference in soil type, but there is a massive difference in, and it's not just different types of grasses. They really are. There are certain, the panicum grasses are slightly paler in color here and then darker green when you move a couple of feet away. And I suppose it must be soil types. It's not an obvious difference in the soil types. And at first I thought it was connected to the marula trees because lots of animals have been frequenting them and enjoying the marula fruits. So obviously they're stomping, particularly elephants stomping around. That's probably creating a death of the grass around. You can see here as well, this grass hasn't grown nearly as well, hasn't recovered nearly as well. And I suppose it must just be soil types and the rise and fall of the crest that we're on. We've given up on Shadow, unfortunately. I think we suspect she's crossed Triple M. We got all the way almost to the Triple M boundary and she was still wandering in a straight line, so I think she's gone back towards Arathusa, which leaves us to ponder the mysteries of the grasses, unfortunately. It seems as though in the true
Now, Jamie just lost signal there briefly, and I'm glad she got to show you a bagworm. Very interesting. We had a Wahlberg's eagle, but it flew away. We've been driving around on Chitwa, just having a look to see if we could find some elephant. We saw a lot of elephant tracks, but it seems as if they've moved off into the thicker areas to feed for the day. We also saw tracks of a male leopard, which are from last night, that moved through the area, and we tried to see which direction they went, and they headed towards Cheetah Plains, but they are from last night. It wouldn't be worth trying to follow now. A lot of the elephant tracks were actually on top of the leopard tracks, but we could see which direction he went. So I'm going to actually head back towards Djuma. Now I know some of you might be waiting in anticipation for Byron's tip of the day. Now I've been thinking about this one. Yesterday, remember I said yesterday's tip was just, for those of you who missed it, it's great to have a camera with you on safari, and it is nice, but nowadays people use their phones or anything like that. But something that I think is vital to have on a safari with you is binoculars. So always make sure you have a decent pair of binoculars with you when you do go on safari, because often you might be seeing a bird in the distance, or even with sightings you get a much better view of an animal through binoculars. So that, I think, is crucial for safari. Now today's tip of the day, oh dear, what can it be? What can it be? I'm trying to think now. I think, I wonder, I think my tip of the day would, for guests, I think would be, because what happens on safari, often if you do go on safari and you go to different places, you may share a vehicle with other guests that are also on safari, which is okay, and you're all going to at least get to see as much as possible in the time that you're out here. But I think my tip would be, when you're on safari, try and be respectful of each other on the vehicle. Some people might be interested in birds, some people might be interested in antelope, some people might just want to see big cats. I think be respectful of everyone that is on the vehicle. You're all going to see what you are looking for at some point. But if you're sitting looking at a bird and you're not necessarily interested in a bird, but the other people are, just rather enjoy the sighting or look around, see what else there is. I think it's very important, because sometimes people can get worked up and upset because they're not seeing what they want to see. You're never going to see what you want to see all the time. Enjoy being out here and just be respectful of others, and you'll end up having a wonderful experience. I think that's my tip of the day. Now I'm going to continue back towards Djuma. Let's head back to my acquaintance James.
Tortoise in the grass, exchanging CDs. Tortoise in the grass. Oh, we're live. We're live? Hello, everybody. The Speaks Hinged Tortoise What I wanted to do was get onto the ground with it and then have a race and see if I could crawl faster than this Speaks Hinged tortoise, because it was crawling very quickly. What he seems to have done, I don't know if you can see this, back here, he seems to have left his leg out. There we go, he's coming out now. And these tortoises are always covered in mud because they live in termite mounds when it's wet. Isn't he wonderful? I wish you could hear the sounds. Let me try and get my hat slightly closer to him. You can just hear a sort of shuffling through the bush. Can you hear that, Andre? This is marvellous. He's being very confiding about this. Keep going. Where are you going? Are you going to find something to eat? Can you still see him, Andre? You can't see him anymore. He is just going in here, I think probably to seek the shade for the day. It's going to get very hot, and this is a good place for a Speaks Hinged tortoise to be, in amongst the crow's foot grass. Alright, Mr. Tortoise, we'll leave you there. Looking for millipedes and snails. I have been attacked by some kind of burr. I've got burrs on me, Andre. It's very uncomfortable. And here is a signal grass. I don't know why it's called a signal grass, but it is. Eurocloa. Right, on we go. I think the Nkuhumas have actually been found, but they're in Buffelshoek. But hopefully they'll come south soon. I'm going to go down here and see if I can't find the baboon troop at the Djuma Dam pan. I don't think they're there right now, but they were certainly heard making a racket earlier on. Hello, Amber. You're wondering where Connor is. Connor, I'm afraid, is not flying the drone this morning. Connor has been sent on an errand to Johannesburg. He's had to go and get some equipment fixed. So that's where he is. He should be back either this afternoon or tomorrow sometime. It will depend on the efficiency of whoever it is that is fixing what needs to be fixed. But Amber, I shall pass on your salams to him and tell him that you miss him desperately and hope for his speedy return back to our operations here. I too hope for a speedy return because I do find those drone shots rather spectacular, and I have to keep trying to stop myself from saying, isn't that spectacular? Because of course now we have the drone quite often, and it's just a bit ridiculous for me to say that every single time we have a drone shot. Now we've got some Nyalas and some Impalas, and I'm hoping also some Baboons somewhere around here. The Baboons have been apparently doing quite a lot of camp raiding at the moment, which I think is quite amusing. It's not amusing if you happen to be running the camp, however. There we have a whole mixed group. One slightly confused Nyala bull and a whole lot of Impala. I'm just cleaning myself of these horrible burrs. And they're all entirely comfortable with each other, of course, because they don't eat each other. It's a very peaceful mid-morning scene, this. Mark, that's an interesting question from you. You say, do I ever feel like I'm working at Jurassic Park? I can confidently say to you, Mark, that I have never ever felt like I'm working at Jurassic Park. It's probably on account of the lack of dinosaurs that I don't feel like I'm working at Jurassic Park. I do know what you mean though, Mark. They're the baboons, up there, to the left. There we are. They've found a tree, and you know what? I wonder, John Dee, is that not a low-hanging... No, I don't think it is. It is, you know. It's a low-hanging nkuhuma tree. It's a brown ivory. And those baboons are climbing into it and eating the fruits that are there. And I know that those fruits are very delicious, having climbed into a brown ivory tree yesterday and enjoyed the fruits of my labour. Let's go up there. Mark, I'd be fascinated to know what made you think of Jurassic Park. Was it perhaps the talk of dinosaurs or the reptile we saw sitting on the termite mound? But no, Jurassic Park's not something I think of a great deal when we're out here. I'm going to try and get a better angle on these baboons, because if we can get a decent sighting of them, they are too funny for words. They do all sorts of things, sometimes slightly X-rated, so I do warn you. There's the one sitting on the top there. Oh, terrified of Jean-Dre. Oh, come on guys, be a bit brave. There we are. You can see them looking at us very warily. Youngster, clasping on to mum, and underneath the belly like that is really kind of a threat posture. I'm feeling scared, I'm going to hold on to the underside of you. If they're not feeling threatened, they kind of climb around onto the top, onto the back. That's Mrs. Baboon. Now let's just watch her. She looks like she's eating grass seeds. We watched Steph doing this yesterday on the TV show. He ate what he described as wild oats. They were the seeds of the Panicum maximum. I think they're wandering off there. Yes, you did, Jockey. You say you saw a fence behind the one baboon. Eddie, you did see a fence. It's the fence of the landowner. That's where his house is. Look at the little one riding pinion on Mum's back. That's the non-sort of threat-carrying posture. So that little baboon is not afraid there. Just enjoying the ride with Mum. Very cool. I think that they're going to disappear. Oh, there, Jean-Dre, they're right way off. They seem to be coming down into the clearing now. You can see a big male there, eating a marula, eating many marulas. Looks rather delicious. I don't think that is a male, actually. It's not the biggest one either. Now, normally there'll be some baboon that's sitting high up, keeping watch, the sentinel, but I don't see one out today. That's a very cool sighting of him in amongst the grass there. Now, apparently you've got a very nice view now from the dam camera. I'm not sure where it's looking. Must be looking straight back. Is it? It's of the same baboon, just a different angle. Ah, very nice. Well done, Marco. I think you're the one on zooming at the moment. Very nice. And you can see the breeze starting to come up as the heat starts to build. And yet it is only about 7:10 in the morning. Central African time, of course. Don't know what time it is in Fiji. Right, I'm going to give you another Nkuhuma Pride update. They are on Buffelshoek on the Buffalo Kill around Chitwa Dam. Right, apparently Byron described me earlier as being undesirable to aquatic predators because I might get stuck in their teeth. And I have to admit that I found that quite amusing. And if there's one advantage to being small, then I'm going to happily take that one. Byron is with something that likes to kill from the air, and whether it would take him on or not, I don't know.
James, thank you, James. We've got a beautiful African Harrier Hawk. Used to be known as a gymnogene. Oh, really interesting bird, and I do find them fascinating because of the way they do hunt from the air, but they raid nests, basically. That's how the African Harrier Hawk hunts. They'll fly around and they'll go into nests in trees, and their legs bend extremely well that they're able to almost hang upside down if need be and stick those slightly longer necks into nests to get to chicks perhaps, or birds in nests, eggs. They're amazing birds. And you can see it's got a wonderful yellow face, but that face does change color and goes a beautiful reddish pink. You might have heard that sneeze. Well, there's an animal that sneezed very close to us. There it is. This looks like young male Hosana. We're back with the leopards. We came to investigate to see what's going on here, if they're moving around. Very strong smell here at the moment. Leopard dung. There he goes. Oh, lovely. Let's see, he's heading towards the kill. Oh, I wonder, is he going to try feed? Is he going to jump into the tree? They were very active earlier. As he moves, I'm going to move quickly. Hold on. I'm actually going to go around the other way. Larry, these big cats are definitely considered to be potentially dangerous. The thing is, we've got to be respectful and careful all the time, even though these leopards are somewhat habituated to the vehicles and they know the vehicles are no threat or danger. But we're always very careful, we're always wary of the animals, because we never want them to feel threatened. If these big cats at any stage feel threatened or in danger, they will react, and it's only one of two ways. They'll either decide to run away or they will attack. It's a given. So they definitely are potentially dangerous animals, but in saying that, the animals are always more afraid of us than we are of them. So you need to remember that. There we go. We're going to get a nice view, I think, of Hosana here. And the remains of the Impala. There's still a fair amount of meat there. Can you see through there, Dave? Yeah. It's a bit tricky. Back it up short. Let me just try move back a little bit. Is that okay? Again, being quite playful with the Impala. So Larry, I hope that answers your question. What I just described. It's again, we've always got to be careful. Wow, look at that. And again, this could potentially be a way for this young leopard to learn where to grab an Impala, how to wrestle with it when he is making a kill. But look at the size of that impala ram. Now, for Karula to be able to hunt and bring down that impala, it just shows you how powerful leopards are. You can see those sharp claws hooking on to the skin of the impala. Look at that. His claws are incredibly sharp. You'll see while he's trying to bite, he grabs with his claws. There we go. Those retractable claws, so they contract the muscles in their paws. That causes the claws to come out. That was almost a rhyme, everybody. Did you see that? I surprise myself sometimes. There's a lovely cool breeze at the moment. You can see the branches and the leaves blowing in the wind. Oh, look at all the flies still around that carcass. You know what? I don't think these leopards were that hungry, to be honest, because this killer's been there for quite some time. And yeah, I think what was it? Saturday? Was it Saturday? Saturday, Karula did have a kill for them. Even Sunday. But Saturday they were finishing off the remains of an impala, and then Sunday she killed another impala. So probably not that hungry, and maybe that's why this kill has lasted a bit longer than usual. And it does seem like there's still a lot of meat there. That actually looks like a nice fresh piece that he's got. See, so as they tear open certain areas, they'll get some fresh meat that hasn't been exposed yet. Now I can't seem to see where Karula or young Shungile are. I'm sure they're in this area, probably laying in the shade somewhere. Justin, I'm not sure exactly how deep the puncture wound would be if a leopard had to grab your arm with its claws, but I've seen leopard's claws that have been collected, and a leopard claw, and especially that dew claw, and I'll show you shortly how long it is, but it's probably, I can't remember inches again. I always get this wrong, I'm sorry, but it's probably about that long. Now that length of sharp claw with the muscle that goes with it, from these leopards, the strength and power, they'd cause serious damage. I have seen footage of leopards attacking people, and I've seen images of people that have survived a leopard attack, and I can't even begin to explain how how powerful these cats are and how much damage they can do to a person. There was a story of a leopard, an injured leopard, which was on the side of a road in a game reserve. This was quite a few years ago, and somebody riding a bicycle rode past, and this leopard obviously got a fright and just attacked, and basically scalped this person, and he was so badly injured, but he was lying on the side of the road, and a vehicle came past with a number of staff members heading to the lodge, and they stopped to help him, and the leopard was still there, and the leopard ended up injuring 17 people. So look, we and that's another thing, and that will be a tip of the day for tomorrow, but just always remember these are wild animals. Always be careful and never take them for granted. Never underestimate these animals. Now we'll sit with Hosana a little bit longer, see what he gets up to. James decided to go mountain climbing.
I've gone for a stroll up the top of a termite mound to see what I can see. Unfortunately, we had a minor problem with the backpack, but luckily Steph was on hand to come and save us. And when you last saw me, James was talking about bush origami. So look, I made something while I was waiting for Steph in the road. It's a swan. Can't you tell? It's really hard. Bush origami is really difficult, is what I've discovered, especially in summer when the leaves are all fresh and green and don't want to bend in any direction. So obviously I had to cheat and use some grass. And I tried to make the head, but the grass kept... I don't know. It's a swan. And I'm sure you can all see very clearly that it is a swan. Can't you see that, Craig? Yeah, sure. Kirsty says it looks real. If you say so, Kirst. I'm going to deposit my swan on the top of the termite mound so that it can puzzle somebody who comes to find it later. Try and work out what creature's been doing artwork. Right, we're going to do a sock segment. Now, I know that Byron does a tip of the day. I've got a tip of the day for you. Don't go walking in summer without gaiters. And this is why. Because sticky love seed grass likes to stick. This is why you shouldn't go walking with just socks without gaiters, or you should wear long trousers, because otherwise you basically ruin a perfectly good pair of socks. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that this is my last matching pair of socks. So there we go. So a method of seed dispersal, which baffles me slightly, although I suppose animal fur is not quite the consistency of socks. But there's not so much dispersing happening, because it doesn't really come off all that easily. So there's the grass or some seeds for James to look at under the microscope. It comes from these ones. I think it is these ones. I'm a bit rusty on my grasses. Yep, that's it. That's the culprit. Those are the grasses that you don't really want to walk through, because if you look very carefully, you might just be able to see those tiny, tiny hooks on each and every single grass seed. And I now have pretty much an entire species contained in my socks on both feet. It's going to be... It depends on whether or not I have the patience to sit and pluck each and every single one out, or if I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen. The other thing I wanted to show you was this pile of marula seeds that I found. Herbie found the first pile, and then I found the second pile. And it's interesting. Herbie tells me it's impala that have been feeding off them. And I found them all grouped together. But impala they're not like elephants. They don't swallow the marula fruit whole. They chew on the edge and they get the pulp off. And you can actually... Oh, Jamie. See, I told you I was clumsy. You can actually see the scrape marks of the teeth. I don't know if you can see it there, Craig. And you can see where their teeth have scraped along and scraped away the fleshy pulp of the marula seed. But what fascinates me is that they deposited them all. It's not in their dung, but they deposited them all in one pile. I can't quite work that one out. Right, it's time for us to flee the flies that are gathering around us. Speaking of impala and feeding off marula fruit, let's go and have a look at said antelope.
There are a few impala here. We've come to Twin Dams, and there's some impala standing in the shade over there. They're grazing and settling in for what is going to be a very hot day indeed. There they are, inexorably becoming closer to you. There we go. Well done, Jesse. And you can see that impala ain't going to be going too far from there for the rest of the day until it starts to cool down a bit. And then in front of the impala, we have got two species of bird. Egyptian goose and blacksmith lapwing. Second blacksmith lapwing sighting of the day. Very exciting that. First goose sighting of the day. Excellent. And Jeandre and I were just reminiscing of a time when we would come through here and there were little Egyptian goslings with the Egyptian geese. And then, of course, we realized that they'd lost their babies. Probably within, I don't know, I think certainly less than a week of them leaving the nest. So they'll have to try again next year, I guess. They might try again this year, but I think it's probably getting a bit late now. And the ubiquitous kind of pair of blacksmith lapwings that sits at every single water point. They're a wonderful sort of presence of comfort, I find, because it always just tells you that things are as they should be. Eating little invertebrates, probably a lot of snails, water boatmen, spiders that scud along the surface tension of the water. And in the background, the squawking of some starlings. I think that they're shouting at something like a snake. Let's go and look. Unless it's a gymnogene. Oh, Jesse, it's in this tree up here. Just keep an eye out. They are very angry. They're very, very angry. Yeah, I think there's a snake up here. There the birds are, up there. And I'm going to just train my binoculars on the tree to see if I can't see a snake. We had an amazing sighting the other day of a boomslang or tree snake. I wonder if it hasn't gone into that nest. Yes, and Fuzzman Sparkles, you say we've seen a lizard, a tortoise, and a crocodile today. And a snake would rather complete our reptile drive. It would, wouldn't it? I don't know, they seem to be almost fighting with a hornbill, which is strange. Now, a snake can be very, very hidden over here. And if you've ever seen a tree snake or a vine snake, you will know that they look, well, not unlike trees and vines, really. I'm going to go a little bit forward, see if we can't get another view, a different angle. They might just be fighting with the hornbill, but I don't know why there'd be alarm calling. Let's try up on that sort of right-hand fork with the holes in it. I wonder if a snake didn't go in there. I say, when one thinks of snakes in these trees, one always thinks slightly twice about climbing them. But almost always, the snake will try and escape from a human being before it tries to bite it. Virtual starlings and yellow-billed hornbills in here. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. There are lots and lots of tree cavities, so many birds will have tried to breed in this tree during the course of the year. We'll just go a little bit around the other side. I'm getting a crick in my neck. No, I can't see anything there. Let us continue. We're going to do a brief river trip up the Mlwamati. See if we can't spot anything there. The most productive drive for us, but very pleasant. Oh, I've just spotted a kingfisher's nest. Right, let's get to the bird first. Oh, the bird has now flown off. But if you look at the knot at the end of this big branch here, can you see that there? So zoom straight to the middle, up a bit. That's it. In there is where the kingfisher has got a nest. That's very cool. That's the second one we found this year. But I've yet to catch a kingfisher actually going into or out of its nest. Jamie, you're wondering about whether or not birds ever fight for territory. Absolutely they do. They do quite a lot of fighting over territory. They largely, though, much like lions and leopards and just about every other territorial animal, will try and avoid conflict by shouting. They'll make a big noise at each other rather, so they'll call and they'll sing rather than actually having a physical fight, because of course there's not a great deal of medical facility out here if you happen to get injured, and so rather than put yourself in the ring with a potentially dangerous opponent, basically what you do is shout, and that will hopefully deter any predators or any territorial competition. But it does happen from time to time that they will fight, and certainly aerial fights between birds are quite common, especially amongst the raptors. There's some waterbuck doing what we're going to be doing fairly soon. They're sitting very comfortably in the shade. Doesn't that look like a nice... Ooh, dear. There we go. Doesn't that look nice? That looks like the place to be at this time of the day, when it is so hot. Still, we haven't had anything like the heat we had last year. Let's try a little... There we go. Well done, Jessie. There we are. Young waterbuck and a few cows sitting in the deep shade there. Very nicely hidden. Oh, and some hornbills in the background feeding around. They don't seem to worry about the heat nearly as much as the mammals do. And much like yesterday, you know, there's a strange northeasterly wind coming off the sea. I always find it quite romantic to say coming off the sea, because one doesn't think of us as being in a coastal area. That is because we're not in a coastal area. Righty, we have a few minutes left of the drive. Well, we've got about 20 or so, so let's head back to Byron and his leopards and hope that he hasn't got stuck in their teeth.
I haven't, James. I haven't got stuck in the teeth, fortunately. Now they seem to be hiding. This looks like Karula off to my left. In the long grass. They're moving around, but as I thought and as I said earlier, it's getting very hot. So they're resting in the shade. They're not moving around as much. And they seem to be hiding from us. I'm sure they will still be here later this afternoon, so we'll probably head back here at some point and see if we can have another view of them. Hopefully we get one or two of them up in a tree again, just like this morning. Had a lovely view of them. I think we're going to leave them. You know what? They're in the long grass. They're resting now. We had a great view of them, so let's see what else we can find. Now, Jamie was talking about something quite funny, and I can relate to it. She mentioned about the getting stuck in in a aardvark hole. Now, Jamie, I'd love to tease you about that, but I can't because it's happened to me. And I'll never forget. So, where I used to work, if you ever got stuck, and so you know, when we are guiding guests, we carry rifles and we carry our rounds pouch on our belt with the rounds in it for the rifle. But if you ever got stuck, if you needed assistance by any other guide, you had to wear a bright pink rounds pouch. So obviously as a guide it didn't look very good, and people could see it immediately, and then you had to explain why you had it. So if you got stuck though and you got out yourself, it was fine. That's okay. If you managed to dig your way out or just somehow get out, it's fine. But if somebody had to help you, you got the pink rounds pouch. No, Now, obviously in summer, it was a lot easier to get stuck because there was a lot more water and mud and so on around. However, in winter one year, I went driving and on a crest area, so not even a tricky area, and I was driving into a lion sighting, and the lions were lying not far from us, and as I approached, I saw half of a hole in front of me, and I thought I would dodge it, and as I swerved, I drove over the hole, and the back tire fell into the hole. It was a big aardvark hole, a fairly newish one, fairly fresh, or from that season at least, and this aardvark hole was massive. And the back of the Land Rover fell in, and the tire, and my nose was pointing in the sky, and I could not get out. It doesn't matter what I did, it was just too deep, I couldn't get out. And I couldn't get out to dig myself out because the lions were lying 10 feet from us, or 20 feet from us. So one of the other vehicles had to come, and he literally just pushed his car against the bull bar on our vehicle. He pushed us about this far, and I then drove out. But I had to get the pink pouch. So, Jamie, I can relate to your story completely, and it happens to the best of us. I've been seeing elephant tracks all morning, and especially on Chitwa, but unfortunately no sign of them around. I was hoping to see some elephant this morning. Okay, now I'm going to continue our search for elephant. Jamie, speaking of Jamie, Jamie's got some grass she'd like to show you.
Grass that I far prefer to the grass that we were talking about earlier, the one that's stuck all over my socks. This is my favorite species, one of my favorite species of grass, and it's called Natal Redtop, and it's really, really beautiful. And this is a proper ripe stalk of Natal Redtop, and that's of course when it gets this beautiful, well, now it wants to blow in the wind, this beautiful shining red color. Sorry, Craig, it was nice and still earlier. Stop blowing. That doesn't help, does it? Oh, there you go, my favorite species of grass, Natal Redtop. And it's very soft and very silky. Very, very soft. It's velvety. It feels like when I do that, it feels like I'm running my fingers along velvet. And it, of course, one of the other reasons why it's my favorite type of grass is it relies on wind dispersal, not sticking to you, in order to disperse its seeds. So there's a whole big red ripe clump here, and typically the ones that we see are slightly paler. These are the unripe. I don't really want to pluck them, but these are the unripe Natal Redtop Natal Redtop. Try saying that 5 times fast. Natal Redtop stalks. Beautiful, white and fluffy, and not liable to stick on your feet at all, which is the part that I'm quite happy with. So we're just strolling through the silver cluster leaves, enjoying the grasses, enjoying the summer. Now, one thing I have noticed is that it's so hot today that the insects have been largely absent. I'm sure they're hiding. They're all hiding in the shade underneath the leaves, and you really, when you want to go on an insect, I'm really glad I didn't walk straight through that without looking. Look at the size of this thorn. Wait, hold on. Ow. It's a monster. Look at that. Africa doesn't play around when it comes to thorns. Those look seriously intimidating. Could actually make a little devil horn helmet. Hold on. This could end badly. It's been an arts and crafts bushwalk today. It's because all of the insects have been hiding and Shadow disappeared. Herbie and I were just talking about how often we've managed to track Shadow on foot. He says he's done it once. I've done it once. She's sneaky. I think she hears you coming, and as long as you haven't necessarily cornered her, in other words, if she can't get away, not can't get away, that's not what I mean. I mean, if she can't pretend that she hasn't been seen, if she sees you before you see her, then she's gone. Here we go. Like a little miniature Impala. Yeah, well, for those of us that on Halloween can't get out and about, which is all of us, because we generally don't tend to get a chance to go to the shops all that often. Homemade Halloween costume, I think, is the thing that's coming next. In the next 8 months. Take it home for Kirst. She can plait it into her hair. Ah! And X-Ranger, you say you've never thought about having a favorite grass type until Safari Live. I know exactly what you mean. It's not really something you think about. Maybe having a favorite tree, or having a few favorite trees, having a few favorite flowers, but you don't really think about having a favorite grass type. And I'm glad that that's something that Safari Live can give you, is perhaps just a different way of thinking of things. It's such a nice soft grass, and it's so beautiful in this morning light. It shines. It's actually not all of that palatable a grass species. It's a sort of an in-between type grass. It's not fantastic, it's not awful quality, it's just somewhere in between. And it's why you often see it growing on roadsides, because it's quite tough. And there's certain species that you'll always see on the side of the road. Alright, well, we stroll through the different species of grass, and I avoid my worst species and look for my best species. Let's find out what James has been up to. I wonder where he is.
My worst species is almost certainly one of the Aristida species, and while the carrot seed grass must come pretty close, the Aristida or three-horn species are, to me, worse, because they don't come off the socks nearly as easily as the carrot seed, and they get stuck there for months in the winter time when you're walking through the grass. Just irritate you all the time. I'll try and find you one. There's a whole lot there. Ow, ow, ow. So that's my worst grass right there. The three-horn. Those things stick and spear into you during the course of the winter, especially when they dry out. Then my best grass. What is my best grass? My best grass is the yellow thatching grass, Hyperhenia hirta. No, Hypothelia dissoluta. And that we find up on Zoe's Road at the junction with the main Vuyatela axis. It's the only place I've seen it here. And it's just sort of tall and very romantic, I find. It can get way above the head height. So that's my favourite grass out here. There we go, I'm glad we sorted that out. I'm also deeply impressed that Jamie managed to create a swan out of a leaf in the bush origami challenge. I am as origamily challenged as I am artistically challenged, and so I'm not going to attempt to make you bush origami. The most impressive thing that I can fold out of paper is an aeroplane, which will almost certainly not fly. So she managed to fashion a swan for you, I think, is very impressive indeed. I came to check the pans here on this road. This road is called Nyala Road South, because I was hoping there might be a buffalo or two in the pans, but I'm afraid there was nothing. Just one very surprised looking impala who went skittling off into the bushes, clearly aware that the morning game drive is nearly finished. Otherwise, it has been a relatively quiet drive on this end. Lipscrest, you're interested in how on earth I manage to remember the scientific names of all the species, and the answer is that I don't. I mean, there are many that I don't remember at all, and it's just through constant repetition. Otherwise they go away, and if I don't use them for a while, then they disappear again. So I find that by the end of the winter, when we've had very little use for the words, because of course there haven't been many obvious grasses or flowers, then it all really does go away, and I have to relearn them again come the summertime. But it's purely through constant repetition. And the grasses I find a little easier because I did them at university, so I mean I spent time with them there. Learned them relatively early on in my life. But the flowers and things, well, they're always new, and there are always new kinds of flowers, and just constant repetition. We're heading back towards home now, and I just want to have a quick look over here. There was a kingfisher's nest that we found on this road, but we came to investigate it yesterday on foot, and it seemed to have been unoccupied. And I can only think that's because the chicks have fledged already. It was just up here. It was in a marula tree. And I just wonder if maybe they weren't quiet or had disappeared because we were on foot and they were a bit nervous. But Herbert seemed to think that they had probably gone away. It's just up here. Come on, Henry. Here it is. It was in this tree here on the left-hand side. Or something similar. Was it that tree? No, it wasn't that tree. Let's just keep going along here. Oh, come on, James. I've lost it again. I can't have lost it, surely. Sean, did we go past it? No, there it is. Phew. Thought I'd gone quite mad. Now, there it is. It's that tree there. And it's the tallest one that you can see there. That's it. Just zoom straight in there on the middle of the trunk. Left, 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 left. That's the one. Down a bit, down a bit. Down, down a bit, down a bit. That's the hole there. That's where the kingfishers were, but they're not there anymore. Alright everyone, that's going to be it from this, the least contributing member of the Sunrise Safari. We didn't manage to find a great deal at all. I do apologise for that. We will try and do better next time. This afternoon, 2 new faces on drive. Tristan will be joining us, as will Marnus. Marnus you will meet. You've met Tristan before. Marnus has been on drive today with Byron. And of course we will also have the oil-ragged, bedecked Jesse on camera, and I don't know who the other cameraman will be, but you know him already. So a great plethora of guests with us today. We'll see you later this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Now, I just heard a red-chested cuckoo, and I know James has been looking for the kingfisher nest, so I thought I'd also try and find an interesting bird for you. It was calling, could not see it. It was very close, could not see it, and it stopped calling now. So I don't know where it is. It's amazing how secretive those cuckoos can be. But I love the sound of the red-chested cuckoo. And having a look if there are any other interesting little birds flying around that we can maybe show you just before we end. What a wonderful drive though. I mean, to start with those leopards, it was really an incredible sighting, a wonderful sighting. Not incredible, it was wonderful. They're going to shout at me for saying incredible. It's funny how sometimes words get stuck in your head. It was a tremendous sighting, that's what it was, tremendous. And to see young Shingile climb down and jump out of the tree, that for me was a highlight probably for today. Just got back to quarantine. I think now I'm going to try and track some bacon and eggs. Who knows what we find for breakfast. Well, thank you very much everyone, from myself and from Dave on camera. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let's head back to Jamie and she'll end off the show. Bye.
I'm quite excited about the smell of breakfast that I can smell wafting across quarantine. Like when you're riding horses and they see the stable and all of a sudden a horse that was quite happily strolling is all of a sudden trotting. That's sort of the point that I'm at. slight acceleration, which doesn't help poor Craig, who's walking backwards with a very large backpack and one very large antenna sticking up behind him. I hear that James has been mentioning that Tristan will be arriving this afternoon. That is because he's going to be working as one of our new presenters, which is of course very exciting. We're all very, very excited to have him. Apparently he was quite nervous. He's living with Brent and myself in Hoedspruit with Ali, and Brent says he's a little bit nervous, so I hope you're all very nice to him in his first few days as he finds his feet, because I promise you, it's a terrifying, terrifying thing when you first start. And also for Marnus, of course, who'll be doing his interview drive, that's also a terrifying thing. I was thinking about it when Wendy made that appalling sound during our leopard sighting yesterday. That's a good point. Sorry, Kirst. I should probably clarify that the fact that Tristan is coming doesn't mean that anybody's leaving. Nobody's going anywhere. So you don't need to worry about that. None of us are leaving. Apparently, Steph phoned me yesterday. Apparently, I'm going on leave today for 4 days, which is lovely to hear. But, so yes, I'll be gone for a few days, but when I come back, we will all be grouped back together once again. Taylor will be back, Tristan will be here, and all will be very, very thrilling. But yes, please be kind to Tristan and Marnus, as I have no doubt you will be. It is a very intimidating thing, doing the whole interview process, especially when you've been guiding and you're really not sure about how this whole camera deal works at all. And on that note, we are nearly at the DRC. I don't know whether any of you saw the fact that the DRC sign had been pushed over by an elephant at some point, but it seems to have been rebuilt. Look, the troops are gathering. Here comes James. Must be, I think. Looks like James. No wave. No wave at all. How rude is that? Right, on that note, it's time for us to say our goodbyes and our thank yous. Thank you, Craig, for all of your wonderful camera work, and I'm really sorry I've been walking so fast. I apologize. Jean-Andre shouts at me all the time. Slow down. And thank you to Kirsty and to Jerry in Final Control. Most importantly, a big thank you to all of you. It is always very special to have you joining us and sending through your questions and your comments. I hope you've had a lovely sunrise safari and that you're looking forward to all of the new things that the sunset safari will hold. Until we see you then, well, I'll only see you on Saturday, but until we all see you collectively again, we hope that you have a wonderful evening wherever you happen to be, and we'll see you on the sunset safari. Bye-bye, everybody.